Trump va ganando en las encuestas para las siguientes elecciones y ahorita está pidiendo ayuda de cómo planear la invasión de México.
Yeah, we got an election coming up, obviously, and in the Republican primary, Trump is leading heavily. It looks like the nomination is all but wrapped up for him, whereas Joe Biden actually has a couple interesting challengers in the Democratic primary. There's one named Marianne Williamson, who's to the left of Biden, advocating for healthcare, and a very similar candidate to Bernie Sanders, but without the mass support behind her. And then RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the nephew of John F. Kennedy, he was really critical of Joe Biden, and he's getting decent support. And then you have a third-party candidate, Cornel West, who's around 4 or 5% in the polls right now, who's running third-party on a platform of anti-imperialism and socialism explicitly. So it's very interesting. But if I had to guess, I would say right now it looks like the election is leaning towards Trump. And a poll just came out that showed him leading Biden
10 points
by about 10 points.
Like, what does it mean? Like, he's asking for plans to Mexico. What's your take on this?
I mean, it's sad to see, because he was starting his campaign by saying we need to end the proxy Ukraine. We need to end the. But I mean, that's what he said in his last campaign too. And then he put in his cabinet John Bolton and Mike Pompeo, and was getting advised from Elliot Abrams, these guys who were architects of the Iraq and other horrific regime change interventions, just arch neocons. So a lot of people had hope that Trump was going to at least frame himself as the anti-imperialist candidate, which maybe he still is in the case of the proxy. But then he comes out with this absurd plan to invade Mexico, supposedly into Mexico, which Fox News is also pushing right now, which is a Republican outlet in the U.S. And this isn't something that the Democratic Party is even talking about. So it's almost like Trump going out of his way to push for another, and it kind of pokes holes in the idea that Trump is an anti-imperialist, in my opinion.
And what do you think is Trump's fixation with Mexico? Just the fact that it's close enough that people can relate? Like, why do you think he scapegoats Mexico all the time?
Yeah, I think it's just become a xenophobic trope that really began with Fox News and was probably thought up by some right-wing or Republican think tanks at some point. But I mean, that's just always been a thing in America since I was young, is people talk about a problem with immigration and they always jump to Mexico. I think it's just because they're at our southern border. So I think Trump is just trying to capitalize on a xenophobic trope that's existed within the U.S. for a long time.
So let's see. That's also very interesting for Mexico as well, since we have coming elections in Mexico as well, and we have now we're coming to more stable candidates to what we're going to see in the next cycle, which is going to be decided very soon. And I think Mexican candidates already need to be prepared into how to address and how to position themselves, because the relationship between Mexico and the U.S. is very much symbiotic, especially for Mexico. Mexico is heavily dependent on whatever the U.S. does and how the U.S. economy behaves. And if we have Trump in power for the next term, then whoever is the next Mexican president needs to be completely prepared to what will come.
For sure. I mean, maybe that's what this is about. Maybe they just see Mexico forging, and Trump, especially since the American deep state and legal system has been targeting Trump to try and knock him out of the next election, or at least the Democrats have been. Trump has been ratcheting up the anti-China rhetoric, which is, I think, him kind of appealing to the deep state, saying, get off my back, I'm still going to do your bidding somewhat. So it makes sense he wouldn't want Mexico joining BRICS.